All right, we are back with another lifting vlog. Today we got lower body A. So starting off here with 5 sets of safety bar squats, which is my squat of choice at the moment. So I'm doing sets of triples here. So these continue just to move up linearly quite nicely. So adding 5 pounds per week to these, if I can get a clean 5 sets of 3, no grinders, just smooth, controlled, solid reps. The main thing I'm looking for with these is how much is my upper back folding and how much am I getting folded over by the bar. The hardest thing about these safety bar squats is because of the angle of the weight. You can see there the bar sits across my back there on the pad, but then the collars where the weight actually sits is angled forward. So essentially what's happening is as you squat down, hip parallel and bounce out, that weight is kind of out in front of your center of gravity, or it's trying to pull you out in front. So what you'll find with this lift is it keeps you quite upright, which is great for ensuring that the quads are contributing to your squat. If you have a tendency to turn your back squats into an extremely back and hip dominant movement, this can help. And then the thing again, I watch for these to know if my form's looking good, aside for all the classic squat stuff, is just making sure that my upper back there is staying tight and locked in and I'm not getting folded over completely coming out of the hole. A little bit is okay. I mean, the upper back is obviously quite a bit weaker than your legs at the end of the day, so that will be the limiting factor eventually, but you know, for now, it's looking solid, and I think the form is there. And on this last set of 5, I was able to get 6, to me, with clean enough form that I'm really happy with it. You can see a little right there, my back starts to want to give, and I fight it and maintain it. Form, you know, one thing maybe I'll talk about, and real quick, next up we got front squats. 220, 3 sets of 5 on this. I get a top set of 8. But one thing I'll talk about is form perfection versus acceptable. People in life generally can sometimes make the mistake of thinking everything is black or white, right? Like something is either true or completely false, or it's perfect or awful. And the reality is, in life, most things there's a lot of gray area. And one thing I've learned on my lifting journey is with form, if you are kind of the type where you're in your head a lot and you overthink things, it's just a personality trait. I'm definitely that way and can be. Tend to overthink things, ruminate on them, a little bit of perfectionism and like not being satisfied unless something is perfect, and kind of over focusing on the flaws of something, right? So anyway, with lifting form, you can run into a situation where you are obsessing over your form so much that any even slight deviation from perfect, you're gonna count it as a failure and something you need to quote unquote, you know, work on, right? And one thing to keep in mind there is form is really a spectrum. There's bad form, there's good form, but a given lift is not completely one or the other. And as you strain and as you push yourself and challenge yourself with weights that are heavy for you, it's not heavy enough if your form is quite literally textbook perfect. That means you are not pushing quite as hard as you should be, or it can, not necessarily. So at the end of the day, keep that in mind, right? Like one thing where people get quite obsessive with this, right, is on the deadlift. I'm doing Romanian deadlifts here, 285. Again, double progression, 3 sets of 6 to 8. This last set here, I get 8. But one thing people obsess about, especially with the conventional deadlift, is they will see any sort of backgrounding and immediately freak out. And it can just, if you're not careful, be an excuse to not push yourself very hard. Because here's the reality of the situation. Should you not care about rounding your back and completely let it round and cat back? No. That said, if you can pull a weight on the conventional deadlift and your back stays completely flat as a board, it's probably a little too light. Because a great analogy about that, for an example I've heard, is like take your wrist and make a fist and keep your wrist straight with your forearm. And now bend your fist a little bit towards your elbow. And you can see as the bend starts, if you were holding a weight, right, and it was pulling, trying to collapse your arm down, as it got really heavy, your fist would start to bend a little bit, right? And some is okay. Now, if you bent it to the terminal end, it would start to ache on your joints and it would start to hurt, and you're doing like a forearm curl, right? If you were trying to pull weight like that, it would hurt and not be good for your joints and tendons. But there's a whole range there in between totally flat and completely bent that is quite fine. And at the end of the day, my point here is that if you're hitting lifts and you're doing, say, a set of 6, and on your 5th and 6th rep, if there's a little bit, I'll use my own lifting as an example. On the 5th and 6th rep, you can see I come out of the hole and my lower back like catches I come out of the hole and the lower back takes a second and starts to want to give in, and I fight it, right? That is not a failure. That is a successful lift. And what it means is that's a cue to pay attention to. And as I continue to progress, that's something to keep an eye on, but it's certainly not an excuse to suddenly drop the weight down and give up and become obsessive over it. Because what that'll do is you'll just obsess over form to the point where you never make any progress. And as long as your form is safe and within reason, you should continue to progress, and you'll know when it looks so atrocious that you need work. But keep that in mind. Form is a spectrum, and it's more of a gray area. And if you're pushing yourself, your last sets, it's okay to deviate from perfection a little bit. So that's it. Appreciate it. Have a good day.